Hello my friends, welcome to my channel. I'm Lindy, this is Lindy's Magpie Reads, and this is where I talk about books. I read so many books. I've read another 8 books since last week, so lots to tell you about. And before I get to those, I just want to mention I had so much fun at Come Try Rowing Day. I volunteered there. Public, everybody was invited to see what sculling is like, and we had over 160 people come and try it out, so that was great. I'm still really enjoying rowing, and I want to show you my progress on the vest that I'm knitting. There you can see it's got this nice diamond sort of pattern. I'm just about finished the 3rd ball of yarn, and it's from a pattern in this book, the Knit Chick's Guide to Sweaters. So more about that next week. Another big thing that has happened just in the last week, I gave an online presentation, Queering Your Reading Shelf. I did this for the Strathcona County Library. I put together a book list of 53 or 54 titles. I wasn't sure if I was going to get through them all, but I was actually not wanting to put anybody off with a really long book list, and so I actually had way more titles than that to talk about, but most of them just more mentioned in passing. So in the hour, I did get through 44 titles that were on that list, plus other ones that I mentioned in passing, to a total of about 70 books that I talked about in an hour. You know, short, snappy, not what the book is about, but why. Why would you want to read this? I had lots of great comments, and I want to thank my channel subscribers who were there, 2 different Katies, and I couldn't see everybody who was on the Zoom participation because I didn't go to further screens. So if you subscribe to my channel and you were there to listen to me talk about the Queering Your Reading Shelf, please let me know in the comments down below. And just gonna, this is Frida. Kitty has decided she needs some cuddles, so all right, can work with that. Okay, Frida, hey, down you go. Go on. So there is a read-along or kind of memorial reading project going on right now and until the end of July in memory of Jenny Colvin and her beloved podcast, Reading Envy. Her tagline was, "I'll have what you're reading." So that's the hashtag that is being used. And what we are inviting people to do is to go to Jenny's Goodreads page. There's a link in the description box down below, and select something from her reading list, something that she didn't have a chance to get to. Her TBR is over 3,000 titles long. There's a Goodreads read-along group that's on the Book Cougars page. That's Chris and Emily of the Book Cougars podcast. And there's more about this read-along on a video that Sean of Sean Breathes Books did. So I will link that video down below. I want to say that when I saw Maggie Nelson's On Freedom on Jenny's TBR, okay, I'm definitely going to read that because I bought this as soon as it came out in 2021, and I got 19 pages in, according to my bookmark, and that's when I got a concussion and stopped reading for a long time, and I never did get back to this book, so it's been waiting on my shelf ever since. and I am going to read it in memory of Jenny. I was a guest on her podcast several times. She was such a lovely person, and she's sadly missed. Yeah. Okay, so recently the Eisner Award nominations were released. This is a comics industry award that's kind of like the Academy Awards except for comics, and there's a whole bunch of different categories. So if you want to explore, some of the best of this year's or 2023 comics, I'm going to include a link to the whole thing down below, and I probably will be talking more about some of the individual categories. But for now, I just want to mention two creators. Kelly Thompson, who is nominated in 5 categories. So as a result, I picked up 2 of her nominated books, which I'm going to be telling you about very shortly. And also the Canadian non-binary cartoonist E.M. Carroll is nominated in 3 categories. And I have talked about their book, A Ghost in the House, about a month ago. I will link my video down below if you missed me talking about that fabulous ghost story, queer ghost story. The Eisner winners are going to be announced at the San Diego Comic-Con, which is going to be right at the very end of July. Yeah, so as I said, more about those nominated titles in the future. So both of the Kelly Thompson titles that I picked up are available in Hoopla, so I read them digitally. I'll start with Black Cloak, Volume 1. So this collects issues 1 to 6, and Kelly Thompson is the writer, and the artist is Meredith McClaren. Now, Kelly Thompson and Meredith McClaren did another queer joint project, Gem and the Holograms, that you may be familiar with. Kelly Thompson has also written for Hawkeye and Deadpool and Black Widow and It's Jeff, so many other books. So Black Cloak is a fantasy, science fiction, detective blend, and this opening image actually reminded me of Paul Pope's book 100%, which is set in a very gritty future Manhattan. And then we go on to see mermaids in a lagoon, and this is where we find out that there's been a murder. I don't know what it is with queer mermaids, but I feel like I could do a whole book list just of queer mermaids in comics format. Let me know if you're interested. So we've got a detective duo here. One is Phaedra, she's queer, and the other is Theron. And there's a lot about this series that reminds me of Saga, that long-running series by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. So if you are a fan of Saga and are looking for something new, jump on this one. You have a diverse type of characters. There's creatures with wings, there's creatures with horns, again, like Saga. There are elves, and I think orcs, fauns, humans, some dragonish type creatures. Yeah, it's all there, and it's quite exciting. I'm looking forward to the next volume. Kelly Thompson, by the way, is an American cartoonist, and so is Meredith McClaren, as far as I know. Now, this next book that she's authored, The Cull, she did this with a different artist, the Italian Mattia de Iulis. And his art is magnificent too, so have a look at these. It's also kind of a blend of fantasy and science fiction. This one, though, has horror elements in it. We've got 5 teenagers with quite a diverse representation among them, including queer. They're off on an adventure. Look at the details, the self-harm scars, her bitten fingernail polish, and some of this imagery really reminds me of the movie Avatar. I've got one more in comics format to tell you about. This one is nonfiction by Chris Oliveros. It's called Are You Willing to Die for the Cause? Subtitled Revolution in 1960s Quebec. So this is about the FLQ, the Quebec Liberation Front, and it's written in as if it was a lost documentary done by the CBC. That part is fictional, but the events that are in it are not fictional. It's such a complex situation that led to the FLQ and the October Crisis. But okay, October Crisis doesn't happen until the next volume. I was kind of disconcerted. I didn't realize this is volume 1 of 2, and volume 2 hasn't been published yet. But the incidents in here were things that I was less familiar with. I'd heard about bombs in mailboxes and so on, but this focuses on some of the individuals who led these revolution cells. Also, you could call them terrorist cells. They were mostly teenage boys who were involved, including one 16-year-old, Jean Couteau, who was killed as he was delivering a bomb. But there are some things that are just so absurd. And I think the humor and truth is stranger than fiction element of this kind of helps really bring this history to life, even though you might think that it downplays the seriousness of the deaths, but actually I don't think that it does. And there's lots and lots of endnotes at the back with more information. But, you know, examples include one of the revolutionaries who was trying to convince his wife about why this revolution was necessary. And she's listening to a radio broadcast with call-ins of Anglophone Quebec people. And they're saying things like, "What's to complain about? We give them everything. Now they want to take our jobs too?" I'll tell you what it is. They're all lazy. How do they expect to be hired if they don't want to make the effort? And here they go again, playing the victim card. If they could just learn to speak English, this wouldn't be a problem. And George's wife says, "My God, you're right." So in their little tiny basement apartment, that's where they hold meetings, sometimes having to whisper because the baby's sleeping in the crib right there. Dynamite is stored in the kitchen pantry. Young people are sent out either on foot or by bus to deliver these homemade bombs, and the bombings themselves are often shown sort of cartoony with a boom, pow, splat sort of comics shorthand. So very readable. You can get background to what led up to the October Crisis, but also even more than that, just the different viewpoints, police violence, the workers' rights and the injustice. There were 87% of Quebec residents were francophone at the time, and yet almost all of the street signage in Montreal is in English. Francophones were paid half of what Anglophone residents were paid. Just so much unfairness, and violence was a result. Oh, one more comics set. This one was from Hoopla, and I talked about it 2 months ago on my channel. It's a anthology called The Outside, Trans and Non-Binary Comics. And when I did my book talk for the Strathcona County Library System, when it was a digital item or something that was in audio, I used a little printout of the cover just to have something to hold up and show you. But I'm mentioning it again because it is up for an Eisner Award in the anthologies category. Next up, I've got 3 audiobooks to tell you about, starting with the latest by Catherine Hernandez. It's called Behind You, and the author reads her own work. She does it really well. Catherine Hernandez is a queer Canadian writer from Toronto. Always has lots of social issues as well as lots of queer characters. So in this one, she's looking back to late 80s, early 90s Scarborough, and the time of the Scarborough stalker. So this is based on true events. We see it from Alma's viewpoint. So she's a Filipina lesbian, and there are 2 timelines. Herself in contemporary times, she's got a job as a film editor, and she's working on a true crime series. And the final episode of that, it's all about the Scarborough stalker. And that's triggering for her. We find out why in the alternate timeline. We go back to Alma as a child and into her early teens, while the fear of the Scarborough stalker was happening. And also the way that police and the general public were blaming women for being the victims. So for example, at a community self-defense workshop, a police officer, before he started talking about how women could defend themselves, he said, "No self-defense is better than prevention, and you have complete power to prevent attacks on yourself. You just need to be smart. Remember to don't travel at night. Always travel in pairs. Always look behind you," where the title comes from. And this type of blaming the victim, I think, is still happening today. Next up is Anibot by Sierra Greer, and the audiobook is read by Jennifer Jill Araya. It's in close third person about a man named Doug and his sexbot, Annie, who is an autodidact, so sentient, learning all the time, and the issues of consent and gender relationships and toxic masculinity are just done so well in here. You really get to feel for Annie. Yeah. If Scott of Gunpowder Fiction and Plot hadn't talked about this and praised it, I don't think I would have picked it up. I was looking at my the tag that I have in Goodreads for AI books, and There are 37 of them there. So I read a lot of this kind of story. Science fiction stuff having to do with AI, intelligence, and sentience. But none of them cover this exactly. So thank you, Scott, for piquing my interest in this, because I am really glad that I listened to it. 5 stars. And I wouldn't have guessed that from the cover or from the publisher's synopsis either. The next audiobook is nonfiction by the Canadian journalist Amorina Kingdon, and it's called Sing Like Fish, subtitled How Sound Rules Life Underwater. Now this one has got lots of fascinating facts. It's also got a lot of the physics of sound, and those parts didn't quite work for me so much, maybe because I was listening to it in audio. But the audio narrator, by the way, is Angelina, Rocca, and she has a lovely, lovely voice that's kind of soporific, so maybe that was the problem. She would just make me feel kind of lullaby sleepy, and it was hard to take in scientific information. But there was so much that impressed and astounded me, really. Even though I'd heard about like whale song, for example, I did not know that if you play birdsong recordings at a really slow speed, it sounds like whale song, and vice versa. Whale song speeded up sounds like birds singing. I didn't know that so many species of fish and other underwater creatures make sounds. Most of them don't have ears like we do, but they have other ways of perceiving sound. If you've read Ed Yong's An Immense World, you'll know, more about what I'm talking about here. But they have scientists have started putting together an archive of fish sounds, and at this point they've got over 900 different fish species included. One of the noisiest is the plain-fin midshipman. It's a bottom-feeding fish on the Pacific West Coast that has several astonishing features. It can breathe air, it can glow in the dark, and when it's making its courting sounds, it's so loud that people on houseboats have complained that it's so loud they can't sleep. A sort of a harmonic is what it makes. You can find videos on YouTube. I will link down below if you want to find out more about the plain-fin midshipman. Okay, what else? She talks about how our oceans are becoming more noisy with sonar and seismic and pile driving activities, and most importantly with shipping. So huge container ships are traveling through the oceans all the time, and their sounds definitely have an effect on underwater life. So when they interfere with feeding, for example, then there are animals that can starve on account of that. So since we eat fish, or some of us eat fish, and larger fish eat smaller fish, and even little small creatures like plankton are affected by sound. So all of this is detailed in this book, Sing Like Fish. So if any of that interests you, I do recommend giving it a listen or picking it up in print. Getting to the end, here's a picture book, Ganesha's Great Race. It's by Sanjay Patel and his wife Emily Haynes. It's based on a traditional Hindu story about Ganesh, but done with very a modern adaptation. Lots of fun. If you've read Sanjay Patel's recounting of the Ramayana, Divine Loophole, you'll know what I mean. There's the style. Bright colors. This went along really well with a really fat book that I finally finished. Vikram Seth's A Suitable Boy. Okay, this is definitely my top book of the week. And so far, my top book of the year. Oh, what a fabulous, fabulous experience reading this book that is over 1,300 pages, along with a really great group of women who were co-reading it with me. So I'm not going to keep holding it up because it's heavy. Let me just say that I don't think any pages need to be cut out of that book. I enjoyed every single minute of it, completely immersed in 1950, 1951 India, and we get the political and the religious background and how that affects the 4 families that are the main families in it, and in particular one young woman, Lata, and her mother looking for a suitable boy for her. Oh my, I just love these characters so much. I was completely caught up in their story, and having a slow read, started it back in February, was perfect for letting all of the nuances and subtleties sink in. And also, by having this large group of buddy readers, everybody picked up different things and pointed out different things, so it was even more enriched by that. So to all of you who were participating in that Suitable Boy read-along, thank you very, very much. It was actually Jolene over at Bookworm Adventure Girl who started the ball rolling, because she was talking about some big books that she wanted to read, and I said, oh, I'll buddy read that with you. And I ended up leading the charge on 2 different platforms, on Voxer and on Litsy. So we had, there were 3 of us who were discussing on both platforms. So shout out to Kathy and Alexandra, who were in both and made it all the way to the end. And then in Voxer, we had Heather and Ariane and Angela, for sure, have made it to the end. Possibly Jack of Spread Book Joy. It was her second reading of A Suitable Boy. And then on Litsy, I know that for sure Helen and Jamie and Amy and Linda all made it to the end. And Becca too, I think. Yeah. All right, if I've missed anybody, let me know in the comments down below. Life got in the way for other readers, and I understand this is what happens sometimes, lots of times. But if you have another chance to do a buddy read of A Suitable Boy, go for it. Yeah, just go for it, because it is so worth it. Loved it. And then I was feeling kind of bereft when it was done. While I was in the midst of reading it, I found that it was affecting my enjoyment of other books. I got so fussy about, a book had to really grab me, because if it didn't, I would just be wanting to read A Suitable Boy instead. But I've got a replacement now. I've got a buddy read of The Diviners by Margaret Lawrence, and I'm reading this with Marilyn of Marilyn Maya Mendoza and Sarah of Roadworthy, and so far, so good. But that's all I've got for you today, and I want to thank you so very much for watching. I always appreciate hearing from you, so please say hello in the comments down below, and I hope you will enjoy the coming week. Enjoy your reading. Let me know what's good. Tell me whatever you want to say in the comments down below, and happy reading, everybody. Bye for now.